Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant YouTube channel. I'm your host, James Harris. In this episode, we're going to be continuing our recommended read series. Of course, it is the beginning, middle of the month, so I will be doing my recommended reads for Comixology Unlimited for August 2019. I did want to state something before we start in this episode that is a really big amendment, something that I was giving misinformation before. I guess you can say because it wasn't stated clearly before. I've always said, and doing these episodes, that in most cases, only when it came to DC Comics, they had certain books that were offered through Comixology Unlimited that would leave early, they would be like it's a limited time deal. What Comixology has done this month, they've added a section when you go in the tab for Comixology Unlimited. If you're a member, I don't know if you can see it if you're not subscribed to it or not, because mostly if you click on Unlimited and you're not a member, it's like a splash page of giving you information about the service. But if you're subscribed to the service, now they have a section of books leaving soon, and they'll have like a date. Right now for August, they have books leaving August 6th, which has came and gone as of this date. And they have a list of books there that you can see that will be leaving off the service. And they weren't just DC books, there were some Marvel as well and some other publishers, but it wasn't a huge list. But yet and still, that is something that's a game changer, and I wanted to address right off the front before we got into my recommendations for this month, that we are seeing a slight change in the service, that certain books that are being offered can be removed from the service, not just through DC, but any of the publishers. Far as that I went back, this is something that's been implemented recently. Again, it's not a big amount of books, and it might just be, again, swapping books out because their library still touts to be around 20,000 comics that are included on the service, and they're still constantly adding these books each month. So I guess maybe they're rotating what's going to be available. So that does change the aspect of books that I'm recommending, or books that you're finding in general that you wouldn't worry about reading, prioritize reading, that you might want to now. If it's something unlimited that you check out, that you go ahead and read it because you don't know down the road if it might be removed from the service. So it changes the dynamic a little bit. Is it a game changer for me and how I feel about the service? No, because it seems it's a small thing. It was like they're removing half the books or more notable books. It seems kind of even at this point, so I wouldn't worry about it right now. But I will continue to monitor the situation, and through the upcoming months doing these recommended read episodes, I'll go back and I'll let you know if I've seen major changes, because it could cause a problem for the service down the line. Hopefully not, because it's a great service, but you never know. So going into this month, I have a handful of books that I wanted to recommend to you guys for Comixology Unlimited. The first book that I wanted to talk about is Marvel 1985. It was a limited series or mini-series that came out a few years back. I never had a chance to read this. At the time when it came out, I heard buzz about it. Again, it just was on my radar, but then fell off because what I was reading at the time. But I thought this would definitely be good. It looked interesting, worth picking up. And again, it's a book that I actually myself want to check out. So I thought it would be a good recommendation far as books that are they're displaying this month that are being added. And they added quite a few books. And some of them have time sensitivity as far as things that are coming out on the horizon, things that have been announced that kind of tie into them, which is always a great thing. It seems like Comixology Unlimited is really doing that. If movies are coming out, as things are announced and certain characters or properties become hot, they will make sure they make them available on the Unlimited service for you guys, for us to check out as fans if we want to read up or reread kind of stories if we're a big fan of those characters, which is a super helpful thing that I think personally. Next book that I want to talk about will be Death to the Lux Edition. We've heard a lot about Sandman recently in the Sandman universe. They recently came back into print when Vertigo launched about a year ago. Death is a part of the Sandman universe. This is the first volume in the deluxe format. I've always been curious about that Sandman world. People always tout, Neil Gaiman and all his works. I really haven't read much Neil Gaiman that I could think about. So I thought it would be interesting to jump into it now, being that it will be, it's made available for Comixology Unlimited. For if you guys want to dip your toe in it, why not now? Whatever I see that, sparks my interest is worth recommending to you guys, because you might be in the same headspace as me and maybe haven't tried some of these books that were more notable in their time, but maybe, we didn't read a lot of Independence or Vertigo and stuff like that. That's the real core of doing these episodes, is giving the best recommendations on what's being offered for a month and give you guys hopefully some ideas on certain things that you might want to try to get out of your comfort zone or try something new. And, I'm really, I'm curious about that Sandman universe. They publicized it a lot when they were relaunching it last year. But again, it's just so hard to keep up with all the books. It's good to, when you do find, gaps in time and from the main books you're reading, to try some of these new things that you might have heard of previously and, might be classics to other people, but you just haven't had time to get to yourself, that you can get to them and enjoy them at your own pace and own rhythm. So that's the one thing that makes Comixology Unlimited such a good service. So the next book I'd like to talk to you guys about, Dark Days Road to Metal. This was a part of the DC Universe event, the Metal event. This is like the lead up, the Prelude issues all in one collection. This was a huge event that happened last year, because it led into the launching of a lot of new books for DC the beginning of the year, coming out of last summer. I think Metal was a big summer event for DC last year. There's been so many events, it's hard for me to keep up with them all. Been reading a lot and reviewing a lot of the books that spun out of the Metal event and the events that happened for Metal, but I would like to see the key event that happened. So it's cool that this Prelude, the Prelude trade they did a lot of one-shots that lead up to the main mini-series that I have. So I'm going to definitely check this one out, just so I can have the Prelude, I have the full series, and then I can piece things together more in what I'm reading now, as far as the books that spun out. Most notably, the Scott Snyder Justice League, James Tynion's Justice League Dark, and Joshua Williamson's Justice League Odyssey were three main books that spun from the events of Batman Metal, and also even before that, Justice League No Justice, which I've reviewed. Maybe not here. It probably is either, I think it's actually on the Patreon exclusive podcast feed, where I did some reviews of that book. So if you haven't supported the Patreon yet, you definitely want to check that out for exclusive content related to the show and the podcast. I'll talk about that more later. Next up, I'd like to talk to you guys about Legion Trauma. Legion is a book that I'm a huge X-Men fan. As a kid, I was hugely into the whole X-Men mythos and universe. Now, Legion, if you're not familiar with the character, he is the son of Charles Xavier from, I don't know, from alternate timeline or from the future. But he is a very powerful mutant. He has a set. They spun, didn't spin, but FX, has a hugely successful show. I thought this was interesting because the final season of Legion recently launched on FX. So it's cool that they're making this an offering this month for Comixology Unlimited, so you can check out more about the roots and the origin of the character. It's a character I know little about outside of he's a child of Charles Xavier, and he's super powerful. The show has gotten a lot of critical acclaim, and it sparked my interest at some point to learn more about the character. But I've just not been an aggressive X-Men reader as of late. So it's just one of those things that it's cool that it's been made available. This is just, one trade, and it looks like it's related to maybe fleshing out the character. A few years ago, I had an ongoing series. I think this is the first trade of that series. So it could be worth picking up if you, like me, the Legion has kind of came on your radar recently because of the FX show, and you might be curious and want to read more about the character. This might be a good place to jump in and dip your toes in to learn a little bit about the character. So definitely, if you get a chance, definitely look at that as a gateway into the character. next book I want to recommend for you guys is going to be Carnage, Volume 1, The One That Got Away. Carnage is another character that we've been hearing a lot being bounced around in the news lately. It's been a lot of news announcements related to Venom 2, the Venom 2 film getting ready to go in production. They recently announced that Andy Serkis is going to be directing the movie. They're really starting to ramp up. So they have the director named. Hardy is working with the writers on the script for the movie. So it's a lot of announcements being made. They're Sony, with all the success they've been having with their Spider-Man movies and how successful the first Venom was, they're really trying to ramp up to get this movie going in production soon. And I didn't see Venom. That's why you haven't seen reviews up here. The movie just didn't catch my interest at all. It was something that I wanted to see, so I didn't see it. But it was said that one of the end credit scenes was a setup of Cletus Cassidy, which is Carnage. So actually, this is one of 2 books that I want to recommend that they've put out as available on this month on Comixology. So, it seems like it might be Woody Harrelson played the Cletus Cassidy character in the first movie. So, hopefully he's going to return and he's going to be full-on Carnage in the next installment. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But again, I'm lacking with, I grew up a huge Spider-Man fan, but I was into Venom when Venom first came out. I felt like he was overused. Then when they start having all these other symbiote characters spin out, like Carnage and Anti-Venom and all that stuff, it just kind of lost me. Here's a volume 1 of a series for Carnage that can help you get some background or beef your knowledge up on Carnage going into what might be his feature motion picture debut in Venom 2. So this is worth definitely checking out. The next Carnage book I want to recommend for you guys is going to be Carnage Family Feud. This is another collection. I think this is from maybe a limited series. Also, it will help you beef up your knowledge on the Carnage character. Give you that needed background of what kind of character. And this totally slipped my mind because I was thinking about the movie side of it. But even in the comics, the big events actually just launched in Marvel Comics that's going on right now, Absolute Carnage. So this is another reason they probably spotlighted the character as well, because of the big multi-book crossover at Marvel Comics right now. I can't believe that slipped my mind. But again, it's a character that I don't have a lot of interest in. So, and know very little about, even though I could be called a savant when it comes to comics in general, when it comes to certain characters, this is a character I'm very comics dumb, if I could say, about is Carnage. So it's good that they're making these books available with the event, with, the motion picture implications for you to learn a little bit more about the character and give you some history so you have context going into if you're going to be reading Absolute Carnage or you're going to be watching Venom 2 in a little bit. And I have one last recommendation that I have for you guys before I close out this episode. And it's going to be Comic Book History. This is a series done by IDW Publishing that goes over the history of comics and all the different avenues. It looked very interesting to me. Though I am a comics fan, I feel like it's so much about the history of comics that I personally don't know. So this caught my eye to, read more into the behind the scenes, the history and the inner workings of the comic book industry. I really don't know. I mean, in the time, over the years of being a podcaster, and I've had the chance on occasion to go to conventions and talk to and meet a few writers and artists, I start getting a better idea on what it takes to make a comic book and how hard it is. But it's still cool to have a comic, but a reference point to where the roots of the comic book industry comes from. So this one was just a personal interest for me. And, since this is a educational kind of informative YouTube channel, or you try to make this as much as a resource for everyone, I think this is a book we all should check out to just get a better understanding of the history of the comic book industry just in general. So that's the last book that I wanted to recommend to you guys. Hopefully, if you found this content informative and helpful, you'll smash that like button, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, that you'll subscribe to the channel by clicking subscribe, and also make sure you hit the bell notification down below so that you're notified when new content drops on the channel. Again, I will have up here for you guys, I will have a link to the playlist for the Comixology Unlimited recommended reads episodes previously, and down in the comment section below, I will also put down there for you a playlist to the main recommended reads series as well. So if you like these type of episodes, and I'll have 2 different playlists set up for you guys that you can check out past episodes that I've done before. Also, like if you want one of these cool shirts, I have a link down below as well for my merchandise store that you can pick up these cool t-shirts. I have this one. I have one for the community called the Savant Society. That's what we call the community that we've built here and through my podcast. And also, I do have a podcast that I do. I just celebrated my 13th anniversary podcasting under Comic Book Savant. That episode is actually listed here on the channel. I'll also put a link to that here as well, so you can check that out if you like audio podcasts. You can actually, I post podcast episodes on here as well. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. I hope, again, you found this very informative. I'll be back next month for September with more recommended reads for Comixology Unlimited. Until then, you guys take care, be safe, and I'll see you soon.